So that's unfortunate timing.
Yeah, our guys are getting ready to do the big blowback, you know, where they come through with the big auger and the snow blower. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. Even if we just get a few more inches, it'd be nice to have streets cleaned up a little bit better than they are right now. But
all right, looks like we have most everyone here, and I see that the recording has started. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I now call to order this meeting of the Assembly Rules Committee of the Whole. It is Thursday, January 13, 2022, and we are noticed from 1 to 3 p.m. Ms. Camacho, are you calling the roll?
Yes, I am. Okay, Miss Allard. Mr. Constant.
Here. And
Mr.
I'm only
Dunlop?
gonna be able to be here till 1.
Oh, okay.
Or till 2, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Ms. Kennedy.
here,
Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Presverdia. Peterson.
Desiree, you're trailing off a little bit. Did you just call Pete's name?
Did Mr. Peterson?
I'm present.
Thank you. Ms. Quinn Davidson.
I'm here too. Thanks, Desiree.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
Zolotel. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Camacho. So Meg is unable to make it today. And then I know from what Chris mentioned, you and I think 1 or 2 other members have to leave early as well. So we'll see how far we get with our agenda. I want to note that the documents are posted online, muni.org, under committees, and click on Rules Committee and you'll find the agenda. And then also the document containing the progress report and the 2022 goals. Barbara will be joining in a little bit. So I will go ahead and get started with just a quick chair's report. Actually, let me just go back to the agenda real quick. It's fairly standard. We'll go through some reports, have our usual roundtable with the members on pending business and committee updates. And then if we could hear from John or Chris or both of you on the facilitated collaborative process. And then Chris get an update from the Reapportionment Committee. Then Felix is going to go ahead and take us through a conversation and discussion about the accomplishments from last year, the Assembly accomplishments, and then the 2022 Assembly goals. And Claire has been working on this and is offsite, and so she and Felix have partnered up on this part. We don't have anything for unfinished business, and then we will save some time for audience participation. And it looks like we have been joined by Ms. Allard at 1:05 p.m. Hi, Jamie. Any changes to the agenda or anything anyone wants to add? Okay, we'll
Hi,
go ahead.
sorry, Suzanne. I apologize. Crystal had
No
to text me.
worries.
I forgot. Thanks.
No worries. With that, we'll go ahead and get started here with just a real brief chair's report. Thank you all for being here today and for putting in long hours. A special thanks to the clerk's team for the tremendous support. We had a meeting every Tuesday in December, and meetings have been, as you all know, going late, typically until midnight. So just want to acknowledge all the extra work and time that the clerk's team has been putting in to support the legislative branch. So thank you, all of you. The deputy council position for the assembly is being reposted. And I know that Dean is working on that. It's not up yet, but should be up, if not tomorrow, then next week. We have not had many applicants or much interest for that position, and hopefully another round of posting will result in more applicants. You all should have received an email from Desiree earlier today with the applications for the Board of Equalization. And all of those folks have been interviewed by the chair of the board, Bill G. And if you could provide your response to Desiree by January 21st, and just per her email, this is an opportunity to review the applicants before assembly appointment to confirm that the administration and assembly do not know of any conflicts with these individuals serving on the board. And Desiree is here and is available to answer anyone's questions as well. And just one final note on legislative drafting marks, we have an opportunity to provide clarity on how to review legislative documents. And I know members have been getting questions from some members of the public, and I know John, you in particular, on how to read draft AOs with the bracketed language and sections underlined and in bold. And Claire is working to create a key for members of the public, and Barbara and Dean have said that that key could be included in section 1 of our legislative document. So that is a reference that would always be available to folks reading those documents. And that's all I have. I know Barbara, I believe, is not yet on. She has another commitment at the election center and will be joining after that. So Claire, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I have a couple things for updates. As you all know, I've been busy with reapportionment. So we had Crystal presented at the Chuyak Eagle River Chamber of Commerce, and Christopher presented at the Eagle Anchorage Chamber of Commerce in the last week, and those both went really well. There are displays up at all of the libraries and town hall, so please send your constituents to go check those out. And help me boost attendance for our town hall events. The one on the 26th is online, and then the 27th is at LUSAC. And Crystal and Jamie are working to plan one in Eagle River that we'll promote too once that gets scheduled. So we'd really like to get a lot of people to get out to those meetings. I did send that email about the Alaska Municipal League meeting coming up. We're not sure if we have budget for everyone who wants to go, but we're kind of surveying to see if anyone's interested to send on behalf of the assembly. I have a draft newsletter, which I want to share with you that I've been talking about for months now, and I finally put it together. So let me see if I can pull it up. I have a lot of things up right now. And what I'd like to do is send this out once a month. All right, can you see that now? The formatting is not the best because I turned an email screen into a PDF, but the idea is to have one big topic of the month. So this month it would be reapportionment. Next month I'd really love to do those legislative drafting marks, kind of a deep dive on how they work and resources to learn more. And then a recent action section with some of the things that have passed recently and links where people can find more information. And then what's ahead with links where people can get information on agendas and calendars, and then reminders of all the ways to participate. I'm still editing this, and in the future, as I get more engaged and learn more about what you're working on, I would make this recent actions and what's ahead a little beefier with more details. But for now, I was just kind of pulling the things that I could find easily. So that is my idea, is to start doing this once a month, and hopefully if it works well, to get you all in the habit of, you think of big items that are coming up that you'd like people to know about, then help me fill out these two sections. And then I've also been working on the strategic planning that we'll be reviewing today. I came up with a couple of work plans, so I'll share those as well that committees might be able to use. So this is the plan. This is the template that we used over at the library after we finished our strategic plan, and it worked really well for keeping us on task. So I made this template and I can make it available to any committee chairs if you want to try using it. You kind of break it down by your projects and who's working on what. At monthly meetings, you can report what has been accomplished, so listing the tasks there, and then next steps. And it's just kind of a living document that you can bring to each meeting and keep it up to date. And that just helps you keep on track, and it helps the team leaders if they know they're going to have to report back once a month to keep on top of getting tasks done. So that's just one resource that could be available if you need it. And I think that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Claire. Appreciate all your work on that. And pause here if any members want to provide any feedback or have any questions for Claire. Okay, I don't see anyone.
Suzanne, I have a comment. I'm sorry, I didn't get in the chat, but
That's okay. Go ahead, Crystal.
thank you. You know, I just want to thank Claire. She was really helpful in Chugiak, Eagle River Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, and just trying to get things kind of organized, bringing out the materials, hauling things over to the library afterwards. I mean, she actually did quite a bit that I didn't have to do. So I'm just really grateful for that. So thank you, Claire. Good job.
Oh, thank you so much. That's what I'm here for, is to make you all look good and help you focus on the important stuff and take some of that extra work off your plates.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks, Crystal. Okay, we can go ahead and move on to our usual roundtable on pending business and updates from committees. I will just go through the list here. Jamie, you want to go ahead and start? Jamie? You are muted. Are you still there? Okay, we can come back to Jamie. Chris, you want to go next?
Yeah, I don't have anything other than what's on the table right now already, and working on the reapportionment work and the leadership. So my list is pretty short at this time.
Thanks, Chris. Forrest?
Yeah, similar to Chris, obviously Austin and I have been working a lot on budget issues. There's also the S version of the bond package we put forward. And so that's been sort of consuming a lot of my time. I don't think I have any other new ordinances. I'm trying to think. I don't think I have anything else coming forward right now. Thanks.
You know what, Suzanne, actually, there's one thing I forgot.
Sure, go ahead, Chris, and thanks, Forrest.
Yeah, so, and John has a charter amendment proposal for filling of the vacancy of the mayor. Interestingly, I had separately been working on a code amendment that's not introduced, but I will have it on the table for that work session so people can see two frameworks for how to approach the same question.
Thanks, Chris. And Forrest. Crystal?
Thanks, Suzanne. I don't think I have anything to add in terms of projects or ongoing things. You know, I think like Chris and Forrest said, you know, we all have kind of some things right now looking at trying to put some things on the ballot. But that does kind of bring me to maybe an issue that I do have concerns about. And, you know, that is, it's a little bit of that delicate balance between, you know, client attorney privilege and maybe giving other members information about something that one member might be working on and seeing if there wanted to be some kind of collaborative effort. So I think with this ballot issue that Jamie and I have in regards to asking if the Chugiak Eagle River community wants to pursue you know, getting some information about what it would look like to detach. I think there might have been some leakage, if you will. And I'm just kind of concerned about how we make that boundary more clear and don't actually get anybody in trouble or, you know, do things, particularly when things might be going on within one district, but not necessarily, in another. Anyway, there are just some interesting dynamics, I think, that might have happened. I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody, but I want to recognize that, some of these things have happened in the past when things are, some members are working on something and then another member gets wind of it. And so anyway, I don't know how to fix that, because obviously we want to collaborate when we can. But that's definitely a touchy subject, I guess, with me right now, and I do have concerns. So I guess I'll just mention it. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that, or if we want to try to figure out how to define that kind of relationship a little bit better so it's more clear. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just kind of throwing out there that, I have those concerns, and I think that's something that we have to be kind of careful about. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks, Crystal. Appreciate you raising the issue. And unfortunately, Dean, I don't believe is on, because I think it would be helpful to get his feedback as well. Chris is in the queue.
Yep, thank you. So I just want to provide a little bit of record here. I read the article on that blog that I won't mention its name, and it was completely wrong. I don't know where that author got their information from, but it was completely wrong. And I have documentary evidence that I would be happy to show you, Crystal, that I started the project in November of 2020. Okay, November of 2020. And I only mentioned it to Dean once then. And it became clear that he was too busy. And so I moved my project over to the 7th floor, and I actually worked with Jessica. I never talked to Dean again about it up until it was the deadline for introduction of an item to get on the ballot, which was roughly 10 days ago, at which point I sent a complimentary copy to Dean and said, hey, would you review this just to make sure everything is in how it needs to be for introduction, which was the first time I had learned you were working. He said, well, do you want to work with them on this? And I said, it depends on what it looks like. Please tell them if they want to share it with me, they can. But the record I can demonstrate is very clear that I started in November of 2020, and my work was done separate from Assembly Council's office. They never saw it until last week. And so any speculation that it was because there was a leak or he accidentally shared with me some information, all of that was just a really sad attack on a public servant who works really hard to keep good boundaries. And the reality is that's not how it happened at all. So I'll be happy to share with you some screen caps of documents with dates on them, Crystal, just so you know. I'm not just making this up. I worked with a different team.
Can I comment on that, Suzanne?
Sure, go ahead, Crystal.
All right, thanks. Well, I appreciate the explanation, Chris, I do. And again, I am not trying to point any fingers at anybody in terms of how this all happened. Like I said, I do have concerns on two levels, and that is, basically how information gets, how we connect the dots, so to speak, when something like this is going on. It very well may be that you were working on it since November 2020, but then that actually gives me more reason to be more concerned about at what point were you going to include the members of the District 2 that this was really about in that conversation. So that's kind of another conversation, and we can certainly have that offline, but that idea concerns me too, when there's a district representative or assembly member working on something that has something to do with somebody else's district. I thought we had kind of clarified that about a year ago from another incident, that, we would be sure to keep each other up to date or include each other. And I don't believe any of that happened. So anyway, that's kind of a different aspect of this whole question as well. So again, there may be a need for this body to kind of decide some of those parameters and some of those guidelines, protocols, if you will, moving forward. So thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you, Crystal. And we have Austin, Chris, and Felix in the queue, and John. And I'll go, Chris, I'm assuming you'll want to respond, and I assume everyone else is in the queue for that. So I'll go Austin, Felix, John, and then back to you, Chris. So Austin.
Thanks, Suzanne. I don't have any opinion on or any knowledge about who worked on what or anything that you all are talking about, but I just wanted to speak up and say I feel really uncomfortable with this conversation because Dean's not here to defend himself. I also find it unlike Crystal to basically accuse him before asking the question of what happened. I find that very uncomfortable and inappropriate. I think the way to work together is to ask the question rather than accusing people of things. And certainly we know that that blog is always wrong. So I don't think we should be surprised if whatever's in it is factually inaccurate. Thank you.
Thanks, Austin. And hopefully we can go through the queue. As I mentioned before too, I agree it would be helpful to have the conversation with Dean. Felix?
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. I agree in part with Austin. You know, I think a good way to start this conversation would have been, okay, what is the procedure here? And unfortunately, that's not how this conversation started. So I will say, in my experience with Dean on these topics over the years, you know, sometimes if you're working on something very similar to another member, Dean will say, hey, someone else is working on something similar. Do you want to work with them? Right. And he will have a very fine line. He won't tell you specifics until he gets approval from those members to actually tell you something. But otherwise, in my experiences, Dean will will keep the confidentiality that you tell him to. So if from the very beginning of the project you say, I want this to be confidential, point period blank, then he will do that, right? And so that has been my experience with the protocol with Dean. I think he has done very well working with 11 different bosses to make sure that he is maintaining that type of confidentiality. Thanks.
Thank you, Felix. John?
Oh, thanks. Sorry. There you go. You know, I guess another aspect of this is, you know, these rules committee meetings can be helpful because we can share things we're working on, and then other people can say, hey, I want to work on that too, and you can join forces. In some regards, it would be nice to only have one item on our agenda regarding Eagle exit and going to a vote or whatever it would be. So it'd be nice if there were coordination some way to, you know, I mean, neither of those is necessarily mutually exclusive. There's a blend of the two that could go forward. So maybe the sponsors could work together between now and Wednesday. Thanks.
Thank you, John. I will go to Pete and then back through the queue to Chris and then Crystal. So Pete?
Thanks, Suzanne. And I just don't think that we should be beating ourselves up over this situation too much. You know, we have an open meetings law that, you know, limits communications. And so it's not at all unusual for more than one member to be working on a similar item. And, you know, just the fact that this turns out to be somewhat of a more controversial item is what brings it to the forefront. But unfortunately, this is just the reality of what the situation we're in, that we do have rules that we have to follow as far as communications amongst ourselves. And so these things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. So I'll go back to Chris and Crystal in the hopes of wrapping up this part of the conversation and just, you know, keeping cognizant that Dean isn't able to join just yet. So Chris?
Thank you. I think in the comments made by Ms. Kennedy here, her argument is that the issue that's coming to the ballot is about Eagle River and Chugiak. And that's a fundamental disagreement. I believe it's about the whole municipality, and we'll have that debate. That said, the question about working together with members from Eagle River has frankly become very difficult because I've been lied about, called names, had lies put into my mouth, been abused, had death threats pointed at me, been claims that I have been making threats to people's Second Amendment rights, which drives people with guns to our meetings. I have zero willingness to work with one of the members of Eagle River at this time because frankly, it's toxic to my health. And so I'm sorry, Ms. Kennedy, that you found yourself witnessing a process where words came into the record that made it look like Dean did something and he can justify himself when I can prove to you that's not what happened. But frankly, at this time, I can't work on these items. Yeah, and Ms. Allard agrees. It's great. She put that in the chat. So now you know why there was no connection on your issue versus mine. But the fundamental difference is there's one group that believes it's an issue for Eagle River and one that believes it's an issue for the municipality.
Thanks, Chris. And I just want to let members know that I'm trying to seek a balance between open conversation and people being able to say what they feel needs to be said, but also trying to make sure we can continue through the agenda and have a productive conversation. I know our rules committee meetings are less formal, but you can still certainly raise a point of order. So we'll go next to Crystal and then Jamie. And then again, I'm hoping we can wrap this part up, return to it at some point with Dean, and then move through the agenda. Crystal?
Thank you, Suzanne. You know, I'm not trying to make an argument out of this. I'm actually trying to nuance what I think is a very fine line. And I want to say in Dean's defense, we did have that conversation. I mean, we did try to find out how it was that Chris was working on something similar. So I, like I said at the very beginning, I am not blaming anyone. And you know, and Dean even asked me if Chris had given me a copy of his ordinance, you know, if I'd seen a draft of it. And of course I said no. So neither one of us knew kind of how all of this kind of got going. So I absolutely want to defend Dean on this. None of this was ever about what Dean did or didn't do. So anyway, like I said, we've had a bit of that conversation already. But what I will say too is that I'm not sure what blog people are referring to. I didn't find out about what Chris did until a reporter from Anchorage Daily News called me and asked me about it. And of course, I hadn't seen anything. I just heard from the reporter that this was, I guess, tweeted out. That's the only thing I know, is that it was a social media thing, and I don't do tweets, so I hadn't seen it. But anyway, I just want people to know that I am not accusing Dean of anything. And like I said, we've had the conversation about trying to figure out where the original document or however that got out from Chris. I can't answer that question. I don't know. But my main point is that I do think it's important for an assembly member of one district to know if there's something going on with another assembly member's district. I just kind of think that's a common courtesy. And I certainly understand different aspects of that. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Jamie?
Thank you, Suzanne. Yeah, I just want to say that I can work with anybody on any project and set anything aside. And so that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. So any projects, anything that anybody wants to work on, I'm more than happy to do it. We're going to disagree a lot. Things are going to come out a lot, the community, whatever, but I'm willing to do any project that's necessarily to move things forward. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you, Jamie. So we'll go back around the table, so to speak. I think that was Crystal's update. So we'll go next to Pete.
Thank you, Suzanne. We just passed the update to Title 28 here a couple weeks ago. The Ethics and Elections Committee won't be working on an additional update until sometime after the election next spring, probably maybe get started in June or July. And So that has been the main thing the committee is working on. We're going to continue to work on the reapportionment. Chris is chairing that committee. I'm also on that committee. And also talking about liaison situations, the AML convention that they have during the legislative session is starting the middle of next month. It runs from the 16th through the 18th in Juneau. And I'm hoping to go in person, and that might depend a little bit on what happens with, you know, this new virus variant. The legislature and, you know, last year actually was keeping people from traveling to Juneau to testify or to meet with assembly legislators. And so we'll have to play it by ear and see if they're going to limit the number of people this year or what happens. But so far that hasn't happened. So maybe we'll actually get to fly to Juneau and have a convention in person this year, hopefully. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Pete. I'm planning to attend AML as well, so I hope it remains in person. Austin?
I'm not in the queue. Thanks, though.
Just for the roundtable, did I already?
Oh, we're on roundtable. I'm sorry. I thought you
On
thought I was on to
pending
each.
business.
I don't think I have anything to bring up. Forrest mentioned that, you know, we're working on the S version and Cameron too, for the bond for ARTSA and for the Parks bond. We'll talk about that tomorrow, but the Parks bond, all it does is add back the things that we already added this fall that the mayor then subsequently removed. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Thanks, Austin. Felix?
Thanks, Suzanne. I don't really have anything new on pending business and nothing to really highlight on the committee business. Meg and I are going to be taking a trip in early February to Juneau, so a little earlier than the AML one. So hopefully everything is good to go and we'll be able to stay in person and the Capitol will be open. Yeah, otherwise that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Felix. John?
Well, thanks. So I sent to Desiree a long list of realistic and some aspirational things for the Community Economic Development Committee, but I think that, are we hitting that a little bit later, Suzanne?
If you want to cover it now, that's fine too.
Okay, let me maybe move to that next, and I'll go through some other things that I've been working on or hope to, and then maybe Desiree, you could put it up. We could just go through it fairly quickly. I like the templates that Claire sent out. I haven't plugged it into that format, but I think I'll start doing that and then work with Jamie on kind of prioritizing it and getting it in that, you know, for kind of our future work. But a couple things. One thing that's actually has been a big goal of mine was to change the way we rank TIP projects, you know, for AMAT's Transportation Improvement Plan projects. And that did pass back in December. And sadly, I wasn't there for the vote on it at the policy committee, but it went the way I'd hoped. So that's a big improvement. So it's actually done work, but just real happy about that. The MTP 2050 is in process, you know, through AMATs, and that's something that I know Meg and I will continue to track. There's, for new projects, there's something that I'm starting to poke around with, and that's for road service areas, whether limited or rural road service areas. We do lowest bid for the contractors, and that's in our chartered standard procedure. But that often, or occasionally at least, gets a contractor who the road service area simply has not been able to work well with. So I'm trying to see if there's some way we can do it where previous history with a contractor can factor in on the, you know, annual or biannual selection of contractors. Also, secure trash regulation zones is something we dealt with a couple of years ago. We have, I think, 3 places that have used them. And so a couple issues have come up with that. One is that, you know, it stipulates that the bear carts must be certified by a certain organization. Well, the carts that were certified then the bears in Girdwood and some other places in the country have figured out how to overcome. So they got uncertified. So we've got lots out there that don't meet strictly the code, but they did when they were put out there. What do we do about that? And we certainly want bear carts that work. And for the most part, they do. It's just the bears in Girdwood seem to be smarter than the other ones in town. So that's one aspect. And then another aspect is
I'm offended.
Did you figure out how to open it, Jamie?
No, I said I'm offended. I can't believe you said that. Eagle River bears aren't that dumb.
Well, don't teach them, at any rate. Don't let them go to Girdwood. Yeah, another aspect is, the places that have chosen to do it had already mostly had bear carts. They're very savvy about it. And the relatively small increase in cost is just not an issue to them. But the places we need them the most is kind of northeast Anchorage up against Chugach Foothills, or in the Chugach Foothills neighborhood. And that is lower income, and the increased cost, which we do expect to grow, can be a factor for them. So it could work backwards. They say, no, I got to have a bear cart, then I won't take any cart. Now it's a bag of trash sitting out in the yard. So you go backwards. So how do we make the costs cheaper? And one way that we had discussed is that it would be spread out amongst the entire city, because we all benefit if bears don't kind of move in from the wildlands. So, but that takes a change at the state level. So, but that's something that I expect to be working on as well. There is also on the kind of South Anchorage, mostly hillside area, I think a really good effort now to get a list of projects for the infrastructure bill. That area, a lot, particularly transportation, we expect that process will be, we'll look at the existing TIP and choose projects off of that. But we have very few projects for transportation up on the hillside because we just can't get the match for it, so we don't even consider it. But there are projects that should be eligible for infrastructure funds. So working with the community councils, the road service areas, and very well with the legislators in the area, we're trying to get a list and get things in through CAPSIS, the legislature's side, and also take that list for whatever we can do from the city side. So those are highlights. And I guess, okay, so here we have the list from the CDC, and it's quite long, so I don't want to suck up all the time, but you can see an update tax abatement policies across the municipality. We've done a lot for downtown, and some Chugach Way we have certified, that they can apply for some of the tax benefits and so on. So that's one. I see Chris is in the queue. Wait, let me go through this, I guess, and then maybe go back to that. Federal infrastructure bill, we'll be working on that. Secondary egress is fairly complicated. They kind of, if you have more than 30 units, then you have to have 2 ways in, 2 ways out for fire. Sometimes they let that be changed if you make sure that there's fire suppressant like sprinklers in each unit. But we'll be looking at that. That has some nuances where it makes sense broadly, but in some individual cases, it just doesn't make sense. Bear carts I talked about. Anchorage Community Land Trust, we're working on some things to help, brand new entrepreneurs get in the door cheaper with the fees at markets for getting permits to do markets, and also for the actual food that they would sell. Procedures for asserting municipal easements and rights of way, we've talked about that before. That's still kind of a pending thing. This is kind of a new thing that came up from the director of South Central DOT. Said sometimes our specifications for what kind of lights or whatever are needed on a road don't match what the state requirements are, and the state does a lot of our AMATS projects. So that's seems a very deep in the weeds issue there, but it might be easy to fix. So I promised I would look at that. And then we'll be monitoring the Midtown Congestion Relief and the Glen Seward Highway projects to the extent they tie in. And that is economic development, that's for sure. Septic and well, the COSAs are only good for 90 days for a sale. And there are some really expensive homes on the hillside that can take many months to sell, more than 3. So might be looking at, why doesn't that go longer? There just doesn't seem like a practical reason that's shown it. Refill the Building Safety Service Area Fund. This has been an ongoing problem long before all of us were on the assembly. Title 21 is ongoing. We have the rolled curbs ordinance coming at us pretty soon. Hazardous cleanup standards, again, very soon will hit us. And then there's a very large omnibus Title 21 coming at us very soon. Also an omnibus Title 23 thing that is coming to us soon. It's gone through planning and the building code committee and so on. Then marijuana, we have a large marijuana bill coming. Dean's pretty far along that. A lot of small changes. We have this quasi judicial procedures ordinance that is very old, couple years old, that we will eventually see. Still working on that, but it could be in the next month or two. Assessors routines, we've talked about this some at the CEDC already. How do we get more transparency on how raw land is valued? And it's particularly a concern for, large tracts, 30, 40, 50, 60 or more acres on the hillside, and I'm sure in Eagle River there may be some as well. And how do they value those? Road service area contractors we discussed. Progress reports on the land use plan. We've been getting those annually and they've been very good. I just want to make sure we keep track on that. District plans, there's a variety that are, many places are hopeful they will get funding for theirs, and there's some in process that we'll continue to track. Alcohol licenses, should they come to this committee, that's something to talk about. Tudor Elmore project, that was something that I think Meg brought up, that should be something that we should pay attention to and maybe figure out ways to spur interest in that project. And that's all I see on my screen here. Is that it? Desiree, are we at the bottom? Oh, here we go. Yeah, see how long this is? This is why we need, there's the last one, staff support for Jugat Eagle River Land Use Committee. Yeah, that's an important thing because that's an important committee, but I think we've seen in the last couple of years, been behind the process a little bit, and that frustrates them, and we don't get information that we could use. So that's something to look at. So you can see from this long list, we need to get it in the prioritization and so on that Claire's list does. And so I think that'll be real helpful. Thanks. And then Chris had a question, I think, on LRSAs I could address.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris, and then we'll go back to Austin because she has a question for Pete, and then we'll go to Jamie. So go ahead, Chris.
Couple things now. New one just came up. The LRSA issue first. You described a systemic issue, the issue of the inability to generate match for specific projects because road service areas are small and don't have the ability to just draw from a larger base. And so because that's a systemic issue, it raises a question. Obviously what you're doing is good, going after the projects that meet the no match requirement. But the question that I have from that, and this is not a question for answer right now, it's a question to contemplate and think on for the future, is how we create maybe a system where LRSAs can opt into a regional program where LRSAs pay a small amount into a match fund, right? That can be parsed out across by application, by approval. I'm not sure what the methodology would be. Various LRSAs over time, I don't know what that mechanism might be, but what I heard from you is that there's a systemic hole that could be fixed by good policy. And so the second thing is the COSA issue. I have been thinking about this. I just dug in, and so you'll know when you start doing this work that it's a little more nuanced. An expired COSA may be reissued under the code if the following requirements are met. Adequacy of the flow is not 2 years old, is not older than 2 years. The engineer just has to check the fluid level and make a note. The septic tank has been pumped within a year. Just some specific requirements to be met that are pretty basic. And so just know that it's a nuanced issue. They don't just expire flat at 90 days. They actually have basically a year's worth of validity, which can be done at no charge if the following requirements are met. So that's additional info for your quest to get that figured out.
Okay, can I address those quickly, Suzanne?
Sure, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think on the COSA, yeah, Chris, I was aware of those changes. The issues I've had a couple of people bring up, but they had to pay engineers to come out and to do that, and they just said, give me 6 months, because all that stuff was essentially done when they got their COSA. So, and it may be something we go nowhere with. I mean, it's not crisis. It would just be it seems like it could be a small thing that would be helpful. I hope it is the projects we're looking at would typically with this infrastructure bill require a match. There may be some that don't, but I'm assuming they would. And that's where working with the state legislators is helpful, because they could potentially provide the match for some list of projects. As far as, and we'd have the life safety road as a area-wide function now. And we did do that bond that got 3 projects, essentially the match for them. And one is rolling along at AMAT's pace for Mountain Air up on the hillside. But we also tried to get combined road service areas in the hillside to get, particularly drainage issues would be much more effective if there was some kind of unity. And that is a very big challenge. It needs to be done somehow, some way, but so I won't give up. But the efforts so far have been not really. People know that we could do better, but they fear change, and that getting past that has been real difficult. Thanks.
Yeah, and it's much like the parks issue where, we'd love to have assets, but we don't want to pay for them. So, but I think there's a systemic solution there. I'm not sure what it is, and that's hopefully where part of the conversation goes. Because again, you can't rely on Juneau and legislators for match even at this point, because the way the current economics run, but we could figure out a way to do this. Yeah, and I don't think citywide is, the emergency acts is not exactly fair. Depends if they are emergency regional needs, that's one thing, but these sound pretty specific. Anyhow, okay, I'll shut up, Suzanne.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, John. We'll go back to Austin, who had a question for Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. Pete, I was just wondering, I looked at the agenda that Claire sent around with the conference, but can you just talk for a minute or two about what happens at the conference? It looked like it was I guess I initially envisioned that it would be an opportunity to meet with the legislature, but it looks like it's a pretty set schedule with presentations, et cetera. So I'm interested in going, but just interested in learning a little more about the program.
Well, thanks for the question, Austin, and thanks for the floor, Madam Chair. The way that I've done this in the past is I'll make an appointment if I want to see a legislator and talk to them about a specific piece of legislation that they've introduced or that's in their committee. Make that appointment before I go down there, and then if you don't have an appointment to see a legislator, then you can attend some of the sessions that are educational that they have ongoing all the time. And that's typically people are flying in from all parts of the state. Sometimes they're meeting with their legislators from their own districts. Sometimes they're meeting with legislators from other districts. And so it's not extremely totally organized, but it's up to the individual to make the appointments to visit the legislators that you're interested in visiting. Thanks.
Got it. And then otherwise, it's just an opportunity to hear about trends or upcoming bills or things that impact elected officials or others throughout the state. Well, and if some of the committees are having hearings on bills that interest you, you can testify at those hearings. And I've done that in the past as well. Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Austin. Jamie?
Thank you, Suzanne. You know what? I think I don't have anything today. I'm just going to listen. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, then we will go ahead and move on. Unless anyone wanted to provide any additional updates specifically from communities, I think most everybody spoke to committees already. Was there anything else before we move on? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to an update on the facilitated collaborative process. Chris and John, would one of you like to give us an update?
John?
On I'll start, and then Chris can probably real easily fill some broad gaps I'm likely to leave. I guess I'll start with the sockeye, which we know we provided funds for, and that is an offer was made. Their due diligence, they expect to close in March, and until then, we can't really do the medically fragile in there, which is a long-term hope for it. And that's because the current owner wants people who can kind of function on their own without special assistance. And I think the building has some features on it that aren't necessarily conducive to that. So will be people from Sullivan will be transitioned over there, but not necessarily medically fragile. Barrett Inn, I understand, has, I think they made an offer on it. They're in due diligence for that. And I think the closing on that would, it seems like it'd be later than March from our conversations. We did get some emails from someone who listed, some pretty significant concerns with the building. She was a previous owner. And we've got assurances from the people working for Rasmussen that they've been in there. There's been a huge amount of work on those issues that were brought up in that email. It was permitted work, and they're happy with that, but they are going through due diligence to make sure this building would be appropriate to buy. The group that would own, I believe in both cases at this point, is the same group that is buying the Old Beans Cafe next to Brother Francis. And that's an unnamed group point because they are getting their organization settled, but it would be possibly just temporary that they would own it, and the ultimate ownership is still kind of in flux on that. We still don't have a place chosen, or even really in process, a place for elders and LGBTQ, which we kind of penciled in to being about 200 people. So that's going to be a hole. The RFP on the likely at Tudor Elmore location that would be kind of a low barrier single adults with navigation just went out, I think, yesterday. So that's a delay, probably 3 or 4 weeks from what we expected. So it's probably 30 to 40 days before we'll get responses from that. And that is doesn't specify what kind of structure. It just says we need space for 200, meet the code requirements in case we have to bump up to 130 temporarily, and tell us what it would cost to build something like that, and it had all the, space for navigation and so on factored in. And I think at this point it's whittled down to 24,000 square feet, which is a large building, but that would be sufficient to do it. So that's knocked the cost down quite a bit. And I think that's probably highlights. We're moving along. We're kind of in a transition mode, actually, thinking in this group. We came forward, we got the broad policy. What are you going to do? We're going to have this, diffused services, different groups, different locations, working well with the providers. They're putting about half the money into there. Doyon's buying all new beds for the sockeye so they can put 2 in a room, and they're paying for modifications to make it more ADA. Really good collaboration there. But now we're moving into operational. Who operates what and how? And that's a very different kind of mindset than what we were doing before. So we're kind of, yesterday's meeting was pretty productive, I think, on just what are we going to do? How are we going to get this together? And some of it will be not really the committee doing anything or committee of the group doing anything. It'll be, just the health department people working with Rasmussen and, developing operating agreements for these different places, and then preparing ultimately to do, we expect to do a request for information or interest, RFI on running. We'll start with sockeye. So we'll just broadcast that out there, what is it? And I should say Rasmussen, but also the coalition, then homelessness, developing this RFI and say, okay, who has interest in doing this? How would you do it? What would it cost? And do that for the sockeye. And then after we get results, do this similar for Barrett, and just kind of as we kind of come close to opening any facility, do something similar to get interest and, and then ultimately get a RFP out to get someone to operate these things. Time is running short. If we close on the sockeye in March, that's not really a lot of time to get someone to operate it. We'd like to start someone pretty quick. The clock is ticking. Will we be out of Sullivan by the end of June? That will be a challenge, to do a single adult navigation center that would be built. It's hard to imagine it could be built that fast. So still a lot of moving pieces. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. have very little to add. The commitment of the group is to, after every meeting, draft a summary page, which will be shared by the facilitators to all assembly members in response to the ongoing and repeated questions that we heard and rightly made, that we keep members in the loop so they can understand where the process is at. And so I anticipate you'll see another update coming out very shortly, but there was a comprehensive one last week. I hope you had an opportunity to read through it. It would have briefed you on everything up until this week. And in this week's meeting, there was just a kind of, as John mentioned, a reframing of the effort to kind of look at it as part B, if you will. We did come up with the overall framework, and what we did do in the previous work is establish a process for looking at capital investments and how those decisions are made by the working group and the administration and the philanthropic groups. And so we didn't do that work for operations, and so we'll be doing that work now. And just as a small element, I made a proposal to run an RFQ on service provision, people who have interest, or an RFI in being service providers. That way we can have an open and fair review of all the providers and what their capabilities are, so that it would be hard for anyone to argue that we didn't do a public process in any way. And then we may very well open up the capital RFI again, the buildings, because we continue to hear people present interesting buildings. And since we used a process to get them that list we had created and narrowed, we would be wise to use a similar process going forward. And so that may look like an open solicitation that just sits on the procurement page where an interested party would be directed to. But other than that, I think there's a lot of good work happening still, and you can look forward to regular reports from the committee in detail of all of the agreements that are made as they're made contemporaneous.
Thank you both, Chris and John. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Felix, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. And I really appreciate the updates from Chris and John, and really appreciated that written update earlier this week. And like that, we're going to be getting those written updates on a more regular basis. So I have a question specifically regarding treatment. For a while now, I've been a little bit concerned about how the facilitated process is handling treatment. And I know that's, one of the goals, as was written in the last update, was around the Salvation Army site in Midtown, seeing if we can get that one stood up again. And then, as I understand it, the administration's goal is to get a rather large treatment facility up on Braga if the Braga extension were to ever become a reality, which I don't imagine happening. So I'm wondering if John or Chris, if you might be able to just talk a little bit about treatment and how we're going to ensure that we don't fall behind on that one lever that I think is quite important for us to make sure this system is intact.
I could start on that, and sorry I missed that aspect, Felix. The facility on 48th run by Salvation Army appears to be on track and is probably, well, I guess I shouldn't say be ready by June. That'll maybe late summer or something, but we authorized that $100,000 study to finish design. They have money to complete it that they got from the state. So that I think is moving ahead, and that would be first. They had capacity prior at 68 people. It was all women, and it's not clear at this point if they would keep it as all women or open it up to men as well. And that's kind of residential. And I think people were there for like 6 months or so, and it had a pretty good track record. So that is still going on. But I would say that is a huge hole. We are focusing on exit from mass care, which is Sullivan Marina, the hotels, and that number of people, but not really creating a full system. Obviously, the system itself is much larger than just what we're dealing with here, but there are still huge gaps in substance abuse treatment and mental health, and we have not addressed that with this group. We got that fairly narrow focus, but without more of both mental health and substance abuse treatment, we are in some regards spinning our wheels on this problem.
If I might jump in, just to add that I'm tactically unable to engage too deeply on the question of substance use without looking like I have a conflict. So it isn't an area that I spend a lot of time working with this working group on. And it is, though, one of the elements we'll be discussing in the potential RFI that will go out for operations of the various entities. And so just take it back to where I was briefly before. We realized just last week a very big hole in that we didn't do the work to establish a process for identifying operations. We spent all of our time on the big picture strategy and the capital question. And so we're just moving into that topic now, Felix. And so you've raised it right to the top of the queue.
Okay, thanks, John and Chris.
Thanks, Felix. Thanks, John and Chris. Any other questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to an update from the Reapportionment Committee, which now consists of 6 members. And I think even those of us who aren't on the committee were at the last meeting. And Chris, I know you need to leave soon. Do you want to start with a quick update?
I'm sorry, I quickly looked away. An update on what?
The Reapportionment Committee?
I would just suggest that already Claire gave that report, that she started the meeting there.
Okay, and does anyone want to add anything or have any questions? Okay, well then we can go ahead and move on to the next item under new business C, draft 2021 Assembly Progress Report with the 2022 goals underneath that. So I will turn it over to Claire and Felix.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne. Claire, if you want to start, and then I'm wondering if someone, I don't know if it's you, Claire, or if someone else can share the document. And then I'm happy to go into the facilitation part.
Perfect. I can share the documents. I have them both handy. All right, can you see that now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is the draft progress report, and this, as I said, was made by me interviewing individual members. So it is a little bit of a laundry list. It wasn't, I didn't cull it or do much besides organize themes and work on making the words fit into this space. But I think it was neat how many of you are really focused on the same areas. So I think it goes together very well. And so I don't know if you have a specific idea of how to run this, Felix, but my idea was just to go through this and see if there's consensus, if anything needs to change, get added, and then hopefully have a final document. And then I think you would need to approve it as a AR at a future meeting. And then there is one other document. I'm not finding it now, so I'll pull it up in a minute. You all issued last year, a year ago, you issued an update on your goals from the previous year. And some of those goals didn't get brought up by members when you were discussing what you wanted to do this year. So I thought it'd be good to run through that and just see if there's anything from the previous plan that you still want to work on and make sure it gets into this document. So I will, let's see, I'll move to the goals section here and I'll hand it over to you, Felix, and then I'll work on finding that other document while you're talking.
Great. And yeah, so the goal for the remainder of our time is just to get us to as close as we can to a document that we can bring to the assembly for formal adoption. So we're going to start with a hopefully quick review of the 2021 progress report, and then we'll move on to the 2022 goals. So we're going to take this section by section, and if you have any thoughts, just put yourself in the queue. So anything that needs to be added, changed, deleted, just let me know as we go through this. So I'm going to ask Claire, just so it's easier for folks to see, if you could sort of zoom in on each section as we go through them.
Okay. Where do you
So we're
want?
going to start with communications is where we're going to start. Again, if there's anything that you think needs to be added, changed, deleted, just let me know. And this is the 2021 progress report. So these are things that we did last year in each of these categories. I'll just pause for a second. Yeah, John? You're on mute, John, if you're trying to talk.
Yeah, sorry, gotta switch screens there. One on this, I think it's a good point to make, but creating more opportunities for public engagement. I think we actually did that in 2020. Where you have the phone testimony and so on. And it would say we continued things that we did mostly for COVID, but I expect they're part of our regular routines now. So it's slight change.
Sure, we can do that.
And I'm taking notes, and I can produce an updated document after this meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Anything else on columns? All right, then let's go
A
ahead.
little bit of background noise if everybody can make sure they're muted. Sorry, Felix.
No, no problem. Thanks. Okay, next we have quality of life. We can go ahead. There we go. I'll give folks a second to think over that one.
If I have a moment, sorry, there's my cue thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was on this, sorry, on the cemetery also, we don't do any work because Girdwood handles it on their own really, but the Girdwood Board of Supervisors also did it. Girdwood, might be unfair to say we had any involvement with that, but I think also Eagle River had its own committee doing that.
Right. I do think that we provided funding or some type of mechanism. I think Crystal sort of brought it up to us and we approved it, I think, if memory serves me correctly. Is that the same kind of relation with Girdwood? Did we provide any funding or support for them?
It's possible. I think HLB may have pitched in or even funded the whole effort. But I think it's on HLB land.
Okay.
You'd probably be fair to say completed site selections for Eagle River and Girdwood cemeteries would not be unreasonable.
Okay.
That's not really, is that quality of life though? Different stage of our existence.
Okay, that was funny, John.
Quality of death.
Yeah, I'm laughing at that too.
Yeah. Quality of life has a good resting place at the end.
Thanks for the levity, John. Okay, so hopefully, Claire, you got that update. I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Just give it another second before we move on. Okay, so the next one, let's do infrastructure. And actually, I was just curious. Yeah, go ahead, Austin.
Sorry, I was just thinking, what about all of these things that we put on the bond? Like, additional park improvements or other things like that. I can't remember what fell in our quality of life pillar, but it seems that those things would fit in there.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, and that was actually the next question that I was going to ask before we dove into infrastructure. So infrastructure is new to me, a new sort of pillar, and there are pieces in this, as folks are reading it, that are both related to road bonds and also to park bonds. So some of the things that you were talking about, Austin. And, I think normally in our priorities document, these are sort of separated between quality of life and economic development. But now it looks like we have this new thing called infrastructure. So yeah, I just wanted to turn it over to, I don't know if it's Suzanne or Claire wants to talk about this item here and sort of the thinking behind it and how it relates to both quality of life and economic development. Thanks.
Yeah, I created this on the fly because there's so many things that I put them in quality of life and economic development, and then I moved them around, and I wasn't quite sure. So I just kind of came up with this header because it covered a lot of things that people brought up. But I get that you're saying it's kind of a new area, so they could be divided back into the other places too.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have a strong opinion about it. I just, whatever keeps us most organized, I think is great. I guess we can go through the queue and see what folks think. So, Crystal?
Okay, so, all right, if we're talking about infrastructure, the only comment that I really wanted to make was in the first one about supporting bonds. The senior center should be plural because our bonds covered both the senior centers, Anchorage and Chugach Eagle River. So I really just want to make that comment. So I don't know if you want to go down this road of actually addressing specifics here, Felix, or if you just want to kind of stick to whether or not we want this as a topic. Sorry, I don't want to confuse where we're at this point in the process.
Since you're in the queue already and you have the floor, feel free to talk about both if you would like.
Okay, well, since we have the other item under infrastructure where it says AWWU opened a new water pump station for Chugach Eagle River, that's really not true. It's not a new water pump station. It's basically providing alternative access to a existing water pump access, but it replaces the current water access at the old fire station. So I'm not sure how to put that, a little bit more succinctly, but it's not a new station. It's just additional or alternative access to getting water from one of the other existing water pump stations. So I don't know if that helps, Claire, or if that just makes it.
I think I can work with.
But it's
I think I can work with that.
Okay, all right. So yeah, the water pump station already existed, but because people were getting water from the old fire department and they can't do that anymore, they were just now allowed the alternate access to the other existing water pump station. So thanks. And that's it, Felix. Thanks.
Thanks, Crystal. John.
Yeah, looking, this thing will start getting really long if we do everything, but from the kind of AMAT side of things, we approved a complete streets. This is, I think, quality of life, complete streets policy for AMATs projects. And also what I mentioned before, that scoring for projects now includes, really puts a high value on implementing our, helping transportation projects that implement our plans, and also economic development is valued more.
So just to clarify on those, complete streets was 2021 and the new scoring was 2022?
No, we did, the new scoring was in December, so.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Suzanne?
Thanks, Felix. I just picked up on this now. The reference under infrastructure exempted Chugach, Eagle River, and Girdwood from the new storm drainage utility. We've been referring it to it as the stormwater utility, but it's kind of on, I guess, hold. I'm not sure how we would want to present that, if we would want to change that around. John, I heard you say something.
Sorry, I was mumbling off mute.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd almost pull that out. I mean, at this point, it's not an active issue. And I think it wasn't really a double payment issue. It was just, they've already got their thing going, and let's start it in the bowl and the hillside. But even that's now pretty much paused.
Okay,
I don't think
so we're going to pause here for a second.
It doesn't belong in any kind of accomplishment at this point.
Sure. So we're going to pause here for a second to see if anyone has opposition to removing the third bullet point under infrastructure.
No, I'm okay with that. If you want to hear from Chugach Eagle River. Thanks.
Okay, sounds like we're good to go for removing that. Thanks, John. Thanks, Claire. All right, any other thoughts on infrastructure before we move on? Okay, then let's go ahead and move on to public safety. And we'll go ahead and wait for a second, see if anyone wants to add any thoughts on this one. Okay, not hearing anything, then looks like that one's good to go. Let's move on to homelessness. I'll wait a second, see if anyone has thoughts on this one.
Felix,
Yeah, go ahead, Crystal.
thanks. I'm okay with leaving that added a fourth Anchorage Police Department officer in Chugach Eagle River. And I suggested that. I guess part of it is that's still kind of touch and go. You know, sometimes there's a fourth officer out there, sometimes there's not. But I think for 2022, that is supposed to be the case on a regular basis. So it's not so much an accomplishment for 2021, but maybe it is because supposedly that's the promise for 2022. So anyway, I don't know if anybody else has, maybe Jamie's got some comments on that one, but I mean, I'm okay with leaving it there, I guess.
So,
anyway.
Thanks. Yeah. So I don't want this to get too wordy, but would you say it's accurate to say that we at least began the process of adding that fourth officer?
Yeah, if we wanted to be a little more specific, that's probably a better way to characterize it.
I'm fine with that, or we can just take it out and then just make sure to include it for next year.
Yeah, well, I want it to kind of be something there that continues to get the attention. You know, having 3 police officers from down Eagle River Valley all the way down to Clutna Valley is the concern there. So I certainly want I want it out there enough that it continues to get some attention and recognition. So I don't know. Anyway.
Okay. Well, we have some other folks in the queue, so maybe they'll have something to add.
Sure.
All right. So we'll start with you, John.
Well, I'll fill any space that you make for this one. On the maintained staffing and funding levels for Anchorage Police, I actually think we increased the staffing levels. We provided more money for the dispatchers, and I think more support staff as well, beyond what we had initially done. So I think that would be worth mentioning. And then I think the phrase "which kept crime down." We have had success with dropping crime, but I think many people would look at it and go, "No, we're not down yet. We got a ways to go." And that's, I think, a fairly valid statement. So maybe want to say we did increase staffing and funding levels, and instead of "which kept crime down," which continues to bring a decrease in crime or something like that. The stats are getting better, but hard to say that we're in good shape.
Okay, got it. So yes, you're right. We did increase staffing, I think mainly through the alcohol tax. That helps with some increased staffing. And then, yeah, we can go ahead and change that wording for that last phrase, which kept crime down, to make it,
Maybe improvement in crime stats or something.
sure. Yeah, Claire, do you have enough for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
not enough space, but I know what you're getting at.
Thanks. Jamie?
Thank you, Felix. If we could, I think Miss Kennedy was saying about it. I think let's go ahead and, if we can, just continue it on there as like a revolving. As in regards to the police officer, I talked to the administration; they're on board with it. But I just like Miss Kennedy, just kind of a constant reminder, if possible, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I think the idea is to keep it on, but I think just to, I think, clarify some of the language, because I think getting to Crystal's point, right now it sounds like in 2021 that there was a fourth permanent officer in Chugiak Eagle River, and it sounds like that wasn't the case. It was more sort of on a rolling kind of basis. So
Yes.
I think, yeah, so I think we're going to clarify the language so it doesn't misconstrue.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I could write began process, and then on the 2022 goals, we could add it to that list under public safety.
Great, thanks, Claire. All right. So then, any other thoughts on either public safety or homelessness before we move on? And thanks, Austin, for that suggestion, reduced crime. That's a good one. All right, not hearing anything else, then let's go ahead and move on. Yeah, economic development. So I'll go ahead and pause here for a second, see if folks have anything they'd want to change or add or remove. Go ahead, John.
Thanks. So looking at this, we did quite a bit. It could just be under implementation of the land use plan, but we did the, I forget what they have, some buzzword, strategic focus areas or whatever. But we did the tax abatement for downtown with that apartment complex that's going in. There was a deal with ACDA involved, and then we put out for similar for Chugach Way for Cookland Housing, and then also the Cathio Estates redevelopment, and then also at the corner of Arctic and Northern Lights, that kind of redeveloping that trailer park there. So I think this gets pretty lengthy, but I think just, steady implementation of the land use plan or something like that.
Got it. Thanks. And it may be worth doing some type of line that talks very generally about opportunities for redevelopment and new development downtown, something like that. Okay, so I'm going through the queue. Austin mentions RFAs, reinvestment focus areas. You're right, they're not finished yet. I think we're actually getting an ordinance on that in the next month or two to actually formalize RFAs in our code. Pete?
Thanks, Felix. The third bullet point down, talking about the municipal light and power sale. We didn't actually create a trust fund. We added to the trust fund that was created when we sold ATU. I'm not sure exactly how you want to phrase that, but that's the sort of an updated correction. Thank you.
Thanks. That's a good point. That trust fund's been around for a while. All right. Crystal?
Oh, thanks, Felix. Actually, Pete said my point exactly, and I would just suggest maybe using the term building the trust fund, something like that. So anyway, but yeah, so now we know it's not a new one. Thanks.
Thanks. Good catch. All right. Any other thoughts on this before we move on? And then Claire, I don't know if I'm getting a little bit of feedback from you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks. Okay, so then one more prompt before we move on to 2022. So are there any sort of final thoughts about 2021 that you think helps to sort of characterize the year that would be helpful to our constituents before we move on? Otherwise, I'm happy with this list. All right, then let's go ahead and move on to 2022. So for this section, we're going to go through section by section and similar to what we did for 2021, see if we have anything we want to add, change, delete. Also, in addition to that, see if there's any interest in prioritizing within these sections. And then reviewing to make sure that each of these sections are realistic and achievable within 2022, so within this year. And then want to see if the body, after all of that, want to see if we want to come up with any 2022 priorities, which actually, if you can minimize just so we can see the full page, Claire. So the way that Claire designed this, it has both the goals and then, if we wanted to set certain priorities, we could also set those as well. So we will go through the priorities exercise after we go through the goals. Okay, so for this part, I'm actually going to be taking some notes on this part just so that folks can see changes in real time. Unless you're sort of ready to do that. I already have a document that's ready to make notes so folks can see the changes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Do you want
great.
me to stop sharing, or we'll go back?
Actually, if you can keep sharing, what I will do is I will just track change whatever notes I take, and then we'll go through it at the end.
Okay.
Okay. So then. Let's go ahead and start with economic development. And actually, before I open it up, I actually wanted to turn it to John and Jamie. So, John, you during your committee report, you went through that lengthy list, and so I just wanted to see, in terms of the 2022 goals, what kind of relation you want to have between that list and these goals. And if you and Jamie want to talk a little bit about that, that would be, I think, a helpful way for us to get started.
Looking at this, there's some overlap here. Title 23 code revisions. We won't hit it as deep as we did, I think, in 2020 when it was the every 6 years total revamp. I mean, there's a few items coming to us this year, so I don't expect, much in the way of Title 23 for except what's coming forward. So I guess that is this year. This identify and address barriers in municipal processes, that's a pretty big title that captures a number of things that I had mentioned. So I would think when you go through and take the list that I presented at this meeting from CDC and we put it in kind of Claire's format, then maybe this would be we could share this title for a number of different items. And build the municipalities reserve funds. Is that the Fund 181? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. The one that you all talk about when you get the FEMA money back, you're going to put it into there, I think.
Oh, that's a little different. There's Fund 181 is a building safety service area fund that has a long history. The other one is that would belong in probably job number one for the entire city is to make sure we get FEMA reimbursement, because we spent, and we've had broad debate on this, we had savings for a purpose, but we expect them to be refilled by FEMA. So I wouldn't say that just goes here. That might be a whole new banner, FEMA reimbursement. And just put job one for the next couple of years. So I think this build the municipalities, you know, that if you put it under this, it just it's called Fund 181, but SAP calls it some mammoth number. But I think it would be safe to say building safety service area fund, I think captures whatever number they give to it.
Thanks, John. And yeah, for my part, you know, that what you pulled out regarding FEMA reimbursement, you know, that could possibly be one of those priority areas, you know, something that we really want to raise up sort of higher than any of these particular lists that we have in each of these areas. But I am taking notes of everything that you've added. Okay, and sorry, I'm working off of one screen right now, so I'm gonna have to go back and forth. All right, I don't see anyone else in the queue. Any other thoughts folks have?
You had earlier mentioned the RFAs, and I'm unfamiliar. I forget what that means, and I don't know if you want to add that now.
Reinvestment focus areas.
Yes.
And that goes under the land use plan implementation.
Sorry, which bullet points is that under, John?
Well, I guess it could go here. I mean, I think in the prior one we had it as well in the 2021, but so economic development, sure. I think the category would be land use plan implementation, and then you could call out reinvestment focus areas, such as or something. But there's a number of items in there that, you know, rezones and so on. Preemptive rezones.
Okay. Then I think Crystal's in the queue.
Yeah, thank you, Felix. I just wanted to go to that very top one, that stimulate economic revitalization. The phrase in there that talks about job creation through bonds, federal infrastructure projects, and tax abatement. I was hoping we could also add something, job creation through improved public policy and maybe code improvements, because I think that it's kind of addressed in some other areas, like talking about Building 23 code revisions. That does impact businesses being able to basically have facilities. And then, of course, once you have a facility, then you can hire people and create jobs, right? But anyway, I think there are some other things we've been talking a little bit about in terms of improving licensing processes and maybe trying to make it easier for people to actually even get a business going. So if we could have something in there that kind of reflects the idea of just improving those kinds of public policies and code revisions that actually allow businesses to kind of revitalize themselves, if you will. So anyway, that was a thought. Thanks.
Thanks. Sorry, again, I'm working off of two screens. If someone could help manage the queue, that would be helpful for me. Excuse me, I'm working off of one screen, so.
Yep, I can do the queue, Felix.
Thanks.
So next after Crystal is Dean.
Yes, thank you. So I guess to speak about this goals page, because just a word of caution as to how it's presented to the public. I think that it's an awesome idea in communicating the goals, but you also need to be careful that we're not representing that some of these goals are goals of the assembly as a body. And of course, you can find a lot of support that the bodies voted on these plans, or some policies that are stated here, like the homelessness, for implementation of that resolution after that facilitated process. And the bodies voted it in. That is a goal, definitely. And the fair and balanced misapportionment, and that's clearly a vote of the body, since we had a resolution doing moving us forward on that path. But then some that maybe are has not something we can find a source where the bodies made a vote on this should probably be stated separately as, goals of assembly leadership or something like that. So just a word of caution, because you don't want it to seem like the body as a whole has set out goals and then there's no record in a meeting of some votes or resolution being passed that actually sets it out. You know, for Open Meetings Act purposes, just that word of caution.
Yeah, thanks,
So keep
Dean.
that in
So-
mind, not only for, you know, Claire, but also for the body when you review
Sure.
this.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. So, you know, very similar to what the Assembly did for the 2019 to 2021 vision and priorities, where we formally adopted that.
Yes.
And so you could say, because we did vote and approve on those, that those were the Assembly's goals and priorities through that time period. The idea is to bring this forward for a formal vote of the body to adopt these as our 2022 goals and priorities. So thanks for that, Dean. That is on our radar, that we do, if we're going to call this the Assembly's goals, that we need to vote on it so that we can say it is the Assembly's goals.
Absolutely, and I understood too this would be, well, I wasn't actually crystal clear on it, that this would be adopted by resolution, this whole document as an attachment, and if that's so awesome, but also that's sort of a word to the members. We'll read it carefully if that's the case, you know.
Yes, very good
Thanks,
point. Thanks, Dean.
John is next in the queue.
Thanks. You know, something I would add to this, the economic development is something like support community efforts to encourage and increase entrepreneurship. We've got ACLT, we're working on them on some things, and then I think of it as Kai Holland's groups, but also I think the 49th State Angel Fund has some things there as well, or I guess their function is to do that.
Okay, great.
Hey, no one else.
Entrepreneurship correctly. That's great.
And no one else is in the queue right now, Felix.
Suzanne, I'm sorry, Felix. This is Jamie. I have to hop off. I have a 3 o'clock. I apologize. I just wanted to let you guys know.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And
See you guys later. Have a great weekend.
you too, Jamie. So, you know, one of the things that I haven't had a chance to talk with Claire or Suzanne about this, but obviously not all of the members are here. Some have had to drop off and some couldn't join this committee. So just like Dean said earlier, you know, if we're going to be voting on this as a body, I think it's definitely important to incorporate everyone's thoughts and suggestions and go through that iterative process. So very similar to what we did several years ago. I guess, you know, Suzanne, Claire, and I will figure out a way to get everyone's thoughts who isn't here or had to leave early. And I don't know if Suzanne or Claire, if you all have a goal in mind when to bring this to the Assembly, if you're thinking as soon as the next Assembly meeting, or if you're thinking later than that, next regular, I would say.
Claire, do you want to go first, since you've been closer to the project and have been working with Assembly members and I have not?
Yeah. Well, I would say ideally it'd be nice to get it done sooner, towards the beginning of the year, so it can be put to use right away. And maybe in the future, this is an exercise we do more in September, November time period. But I think like Felix mentioned, it's important to get this right, and we're probably not going to finish today. So I imagine it'll carry over to the February Rules Committee. So just from a logistical point of view, I think we need one more meeting. If that can't happen until February, then maybe try to get it done passed shortly after the February Rules Committee.
And I'll just add too that Claire and I talked a little bit about time frame, and there's a lot going on with reapportionment in the next month, and not a whole lot of space, I guess, for additional projects. So it may just have to wait till February.
Got it. Okay, thanks for that guidance. Then I'll try to get us as far as we can in the next 20 minutes. So anything else on economic development? And what I will do is, if there's nothing else, Claire, if you can stop sharing your screen, and then I will go ahead and share my screen with the track changes, just so folks can get a look at some of the additions.
Okay, I'm on.
Actually, I don't have authority to share. If someone can give that to me.
Desiree or Kiana, are you still there?
I'm here. I've got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, perfect. All right, so hopefully everyone's able to see that. So these are the changes as I heard them. I will just clarify. So I kept intact this build the municipalities reserve funds, ensure we get municipal FEMA reimbursement, and sort of rose that up as a possible priority area. But otherwise, I think I got everyone else's suggestions. I'll give folks a second to look at that. All right, then I assume no one's in the queue. I'll go ahead and stop sharing and we can move on to the next area. So let's go ahead and do public safety next. And Suzanne, if you're good, I think we'll end with this one just in case there's anything else that you want to do with the committee.
Thanks, Felix. I don't think, I didn't see any members of the public on, but I definitely want to check if we have anyone who wants to participate. And then if we can circle back to Barbara and Dean before the end, that'd be great. So thanks.
Okay, so then I'll see if we might be able to get this one done in the next 8 minutes. All right,
And
I'll
Crystal
let you
is
manage
in,
the queue.
sorry, Felix, Crystal and then John are in the queue.
Okay, go ahead, Crystal.
Thank you. I'm a little bit concerned about the word, well, that very first bullet point, focusing on mental and behavioral health issues, where it says creating stabilization centers. You know, to me, that sounds like the municipality is going to go out and start buying centers and starting these programs. And I think, you know, in a lot of ways, we certainly want to build the capacity to make that happen, but we may not actually be doing it ourselves. So I'm kind of looking for some other way to craft that so that it basically says we're going to certainly encourage these things, but we may not be creating these centers. So anyway, that's just my concern on that one is, you know, how do we support and, like I said, maybe build capacity for them without basically trying to tell the community that we're going to go out and build these centers. Thanks.
Thanks. So as I understand it, I believe the Mental Health Trust is a huge partner in a lot of this work. So I have changed the phrasing there to just say partnering with agencies to establish these things.
Oh, perfect. I think that's good. Thanks.
And then I think, John, you're next.
Yeah, I think that's a good change there. You know, something that we just had a police academy graduation with 13 new recruits, and the current academy has, I'm sorry, there were 10 graduated, and now the current academy has 13, and they expect usually 3 drop out. It's another 10, and we really need 20 in each of our academies to just break even with attrition. So something in their public safety, I don't know what we do. Help with recruitment of applicants for APD or something like that. You know, we've worked very hard to take money from every part of government to move it towards the police department to rebuild it, and it's just a real shame to have something a little extraneous to us, you know, watch us slide backwards.
Now, is it just APD or is it AFD as well?
My understanding, AFD is fine. I may be wrong on that, but I think we heard recently that they are getting fewer, but still good quality, and because they just started an academy too, and it sounded like the chief was pretty happy with it.
Okay.
It's worth double checking though.
Crystal?
Thanks, Felix. I guess I just want to add to John's comment about the academies. One of the things that I thought was really interesting this last fire academy was they had no women that applied. And it was really kind of interesting because last summer they actually did a little program where they were trying to orient girls to the whole fire profession, if you will. And then that didn't really help encourage any current girls. I mean, maybe 10 years from now it will, but obviously there just weren't any women, females, that applied. And I don't think that, that's not the fire department's fault, but if there's something we can do in that that realm of trying to promote more people to apply, then we ought to also do it in terms of, trying to diversify those that do apply. So anyway, just a thought to throw in there. Thanks.
Thanks.
I don't see anyone else in the queue, Felix. And I love that idea about diversifying the AFD recruits.
All right. Just give it another second, see if there's any other thoughts, and then I'll share my screen so folks can see at least my take on the changes. All right, then I'm gonna go ahead and share. All right, hopefully everyone's able to see that. So I'll just give it a second, see if anyone has thoughts on my take on those changes.
Looks good to me, just a thought.
All right, great. So then not hearing anyone, then that's it for today. So we got 2 out of, is it 5 or 6 done? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 more to do. Okay, so 2 out of 6, 4 more to do. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much, Felix and Claire, for taking us through that. I think that was a really productive start, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to this sooner than later and bring it forward to the body. So we'll go back to the beginning and give an opportunity for Barbara to give her report. And then also we do have Dean on. And then I just want to make sure we stop a few minutes before to allow time for audience participation. So Barbara?
Thank you, Suzanne. My report, I have to talk to you about 3 things. And I did ask Desiree to chat with you and remind you that Jennifer had sent out an update that she worked on with the chair about scheduling work sessions. So we have a plan for scheduling work sessions that we hope we can stick to, and it doesn't cause as many scheduling conflicts for the members or conflicts with people that are doing on-base on Friday mornings. We also wanted to let you know that Jennifer shared some information about late on the table items, and we're kind of ratcheting down some of the procedures on that. And the third thing I'll tell you, I missed the beginning of the meeting because I was at the random drawing of letters to determine a candidate name on the order of the ballot. So that's what we were doing today at 1. So we're kicking off the election. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Barbara. And at the beginning of the meeting, I had thanked the clerks team for all the hard work that all of you do, especially since we met every Tuesday in December and our meetings have been going so late. So thanks for all you do. Anyone have any questions for Barbara? I don't see anyone in the queue. Crystal?
Yes, thank you. It is so slow sometimes to try to get my keyboard to function. But anyway, I just wanted to ask Barbara if that alphabetical listing gets posted on the web page. I think it does, but anyway, just clarification. Thanks.
You are absolutely correct, Ms. Kennedy. It'll be posted on the website and we'll get it posted on social media. The news was there and did an interview with Daryl. Daryl and Mike Chadwick always come and are some of our witnesses. And I think Daryl had a really good statement that was like, this is so cool that our city does this. And so yes, we'll get that information out to everybody.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Crystal. Thank you, Barbara. Dean, I know you're aware that we had a conversation earlier in the meeting and you were working on the deadline for the agenda. There's probably not time to go through all that again, but I did want to let members know that Dean is on and knows a little bit about the conversation and just give Dean an opportunity to maybe suggest how we might take up the conversation or however. So Dean, or anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair. I only heard that the conversation was about the two ordinances, right, for Eagle River detachment and communications. But I think it probably sprung from an article I read in the Must Read Alaska. So I would just say that, you know, I tried very hard to coordinate the several assembly members' projects. Sometimes there's some that are similar or identical. And I learn about those in different ways from the members, or they tell me they're working together, or I know that one's been interested in something in the past and so forth. So oftentimes, of course, it's more efficient if 2-3 members have the same goal to collaborate. So I try to make things efficient here because I'm your only dedicated assembly council, but we also have the Department of Law, as you all know, that works for you all onto various things. So anyways, for the specific situation in that article, I was actually a little bit insulted at some of the insinuations in the article, and some of those things were not true and how they were stated. But, you know, it is what it is, and they write based on what journalists, I guess, heard or perceive. But I just wanted to be clear that the things said in that article, some of them were not true. And for sure, I actually mostly wanted to say that I know who sugars my toast, and it's the taxpayers and the voters of the municipality of Anchorage overall. And that's generally, as you know, as a public servant, who I try to do a good job for, and that includes all of you who represent them. So and with that said, I'm not sure if there were other questions about what happened or about my process. Generally, I'm open to any.
I don't see, oh, go ahead, Crystal.
Okay, slow again. Thanks, Suzanne. You know, I just wanted to say, and personally to Dean as well, that, you know, again, I don't know about a blog or an article, and I guess you said it was in Must Read Alaska. I didn't see that. But, you know, you and I, Dean, talked about how strange all of this looked and the timing of, you know, the other ordinance that mirrored the one Jamie and I were working on. And so, but anyway, so I had no misgivings. I had no qualm, you know, about what I think you did or didn't do then. So I am certainly not saying that you didn't. I certainly never suggested, you know, that you did something that wasn't correct. But anyway, I think there are times when there is a fine line between when we are trying to figure out how to collaborate. And that really was only my question in there in terms of how it was more directed to specifically to us assembly members, how we would want to coordinate those kinds of things without crossing that line potentially of client attorney privilege or confidentiality. So anyway, I just wanted you to know personally, Dean, that I am not pointing any fingers or blaming you for anything. And, and I am sorry for apparently how it all got posted in a blog, or if it was Alaska Must Read. Like I said, I didn't read that. I didn't see that. I just got a call. I told you, I got a call from a reporter from Anchorage Daily News that said, well, what do you think about Chris Constant's ordinance? And so anyway, that was the first I'd heard about it, but it was all very interesting. And so obviously it can put any of us in a awkward and uncomfortable position. And that's kind of where I've felt lately. So anyway, I guess I can just kind of leave it at that. I certainly don't want to say, I don't want anybody to really be disparaged about this. I just want there to be good communication that is really respectful of everybody's various positions. So thanks, Dean, for all you do. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks, Crystal. Dean?
So
go ahead.
Should I have a quick follow-up comment? Thank you, Crystal. I appreciate that. And yes, I actually think that sometimes the first I hear of some member working on something sometimes through the press or an article or a blog. So sometimes I'm unaware too. But I mean, we're right that things move fast and sometimes we're surprised, but we do want to have better communication. As far as attorney-client privileged, it's important to me that if I understand one or two, three, four of you are interested in something, that I ask you, and I try to do that. Sometimes you already tell me that two of you are interested, but when I ask you individually, are you want to work together, and I do my best to try to make that happen. But for an attorney-client communication, that's important to do early on in a project. And you have your answer, then, no, keep separate, keep it together, whatever. Then I have a better idea of how to draw my lines in communications. And a lot of government attorneys have to have some expertise and experience at doing that kind of, drawing those kind of lines in projects they work on. So, and it can be challenging, like you said, at times, but I think that we all deal with it well, and everybody does a fantastic job to their abilities. So, and I hope I'm doing that for all of you equally as well.
Thank you, Dean. So we have about 1 minute until the end of the meeting, and I want to check really quick if there are any members of the public here who want to participate, and then we can extend accordingly, or hopefully the body will extend. Are there any members of the public here who want to participate? *6 to unmute. I don't see anyone on the list here of participants, and not hearing anyone. Unless anyone has anything else, I would ask for a motion to adjourn and just thank you all for being here and appreciate the long hours that everyone works.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks. Bye.